It's January 2018, and a college student's Tinder match turns into their worst nightmare. What started as a missing person case is sunny orange country would spiral into something way darker. A twisted tale of secret identities, neo Nazi extremists, and a dating app meetup gone horrifically wrong. When 19-year-old Blaise Bernstein was killed, it was not just another true crime story. It was a wake up call about how the apps we use every day can connect us with people who are not learned to who they seem to be, and how online hate can have deadly real world consequences. Blaise Bernstein was the kind of person who transformed ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. Born on April 27, 1998 to Gideon Bernstein and Janie Pepper, both grew up in a loving family of five in Lake Forest, California. His mother would later describe him as the unicorn, uniquely creative, brilliantly talented, and unapologetically himself. I call him the unicorn. He was magnificently creative. As a student at the Orange County School of the Arts and later at the University of Pennsylvania, Blaise flourished. He was a gifted writer, a passionate cook, and an active member of his Jewish community. There were like 19 years with so many moments of brilliance and beauty. Friends describe him as someone who lived authentically, embracing both his Jewish heritage and his identity as a gay man. His oldest friend, Ray Rasmussen, recalled the moment Blaise came out to her on a California beach, a private moment of vulnerability that demonstrated the trust and acceptance that defined their friendship. By winter break of his sophomore year at Penn, Blaise seemed to be hitting his stride. He was excelling in his studies, exploring creative writing, and considering a career in medicine. When he came home for the holidays in December 2017, he cooked gourmet meals for his family and looked forward to quality time together before returning to school. Those final days at home were filled with the kind of moments families treasure forever. Blaise lighting Hanukkah candles with his siblings, cracking jokes in the kitchen while experimenting with new recipes and staying up late talking with his parents about his dreams of the future. Nobody knew these ordinary moments of joy would be their last together. Just one day before he was scheduled to return to college, Blaise disappeared into the night. There would be no proper goodbyes, no last hugs, no texts. When you get there, just the crushing silence of an empty bedroom and unanswered calls that would haunt his family forever. On January 2nd, 2018, Blaise secretly left his parents' house. He had a dental appointment scheduled with his mother for the next morning, but when the time came, he never showed up. His phone went straight to voicemail. His room contained all his essentials: wallet, retainer keys, glasses. Something was terribly wrong. Blaise's parents first called everyone they knew to be a friend of his, but no one had seen him that day. Desperate for answers, his parents made the difficult decision to access his social media accounts. They managed to log into his Snapchat, which by the way is famous for its self-destructing messages. There they discovered their son had sent his home address to someone named Samuel Woodward, a name they had never heard before. When Gideon called the mysterious contact, the conversation they recorded would later become crucial evidence. Gideon initiated the call. "We just cracked in his Snap account and saw that you had been trying to find him. So you are the first real clue to the puzzle here." Sam responded by saying he had picked Blaise up at 11. He explained they drove to the BGO park and parked there. When Gideon asked if Blaise got out of the car, Sam said yes, both of them had gotten out. Sam claimed Blaise was planning to meet another friend there and walk down a path into the darkness. Sam said, "I got out of the car and I got out of the car too. I shouted out, 'Blaise! Blaise!' but I did not see anything. I didn't hear anything." Sam described the meetup as more of the spur of the moment kind of thing. and said they knew each other from OSHA Orange Country School of the Arts. When Gideon asked if this was the best number to reach Sam, Sam replied, "Yes, sir, it is," and added, "I want to find Blaze as much as you do." For 7 agonizing days, the community surged hundreds of volunteers, distributed flyers. Rabbi Arnold Rockless coordinated efforts from the university synagogue, where Blaze had been an active member and role model. Then on January 10, after heavy rains shifted the earth in BGO Park, investigators made a devastating discovery. Blaze's body buried in a shallow grave hidden under branches and dirt. The brutality was shocked. Blaze had been stabbed 28 times. This level of violence could only mean intense personal hatred. As investigators dug deeper into Blaze's disappearance, a mountain of evidence began pointing towards Samuel Woodward. The smoke gun came from his car. Forensic found blood splattered on the headliner that contained both Woodward's and Blaze's DNA. This wasn't just a trace amount either. It suggested a violent struggle had taken place inside the vehicle. But the most damning piece of evidence was discovered during a search of the Woodward family home. A knife crusted with blood that matched Blaze's DNA. When Samuel had tried to clean the weapon, he had not done a thorough enough job. The knife would become the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Meanwhile, when police started interviewing Blaze's friends about Samuel Woodward, what they heard was chilling. One friend was completely shocked that Blaze would even consider meeting up with Samuel, describing him as crazy and not in a good way. Another friend put it more bluntly, telling investigators there were only 2 possible reasons why Samuel would want to meet up with Blaze. He either wanted to secretly hook up with him or he planned to murder him. There was no in between. These were not just casual observations. Friends described how Samuel had a reputation at Orange Country School of the Arts for being deeply disturbing. Ray Rasmussen recalled him drawing guns in his notebook during class. Police would find these words written in one of his notebooks. Text is boring, but murder isn't. As it goes in cases involving young people, many of Samuel's friends thought he was a weird but was not a walking, talking red flag that needed more attention. We don't really take signs like these seriously until the worst happens. We don't really want to believe that someone in our inner circle could harbor such dark thoughts. The investigation revealed a perfect storm. A deeply troubled young man with a history of violent ideation, evidence premeditation, through their tender conversation and forensic proof linking him directly to Blaze's murder. What made it even more tragic was how preventable it seemed. Multiple people had recognized Samuel's dangerous potential, but like so many warning signs in hindsight, they only became crystal clear after it was too late. Plus, few people knew Samuel was himself exploring his repressed sexuality while terrified of his homophobic father. As investigators dug into Samuel Woodward's background, they uncovered a disturbing portrait of isolation, extremism, and internal conflict. Born the same year as Blaze, Woodward had struggled from an early age. By 3rd grade, he was swearing more than his older brother and teenage schoolmates combined, and by age 10, he had developed an obsession with World War II, specifically Nazi ideology. Diagnosed with autism and struggling socially, Woodward bravely attended the Orange Country School of the Arts before being pulled out. His conservative Catholic upbringing, combined with his own challenges fitting in, led him down a dangerous path of online radicalization. Woodward found his community on iFunny, a Russian-owned meme-sharing website that had become a breeding ground for extremism due to lack moderation. There he connected with Atomwaffen Division, a neo-Nazi group so extreme that multiple countries have designated it as a terrorist organization. His involvement was not casual. Photos emerge of Woodward wearing the group signature skull mask. He traveled to Colorado to meet neo-Nazi leader James Mason and attended an Atomwaffen hate camp where members trained in extremist ideology and tactics. The tragic irony of this case lies in how Woodward and Blaze connected. Despite how outward hatred of LGBTQ plus people, Woodward had set his dating preferences to match with both men and women. He flirted with Blaze and, according to his intent history, frequently visited gay dating sites and they exchanged messages sporadically until winter break provided an opportunity to meet in person. What happened next would show how deadly the combination of self-hatred, fear, and extremism can be. When police finally caught up with Samuel Woodward, it was not in some dramatic raid or standoff. Undercover officers simply waited until he put out of his Newport Beach driveway and then stopped his car during interrogation. Woodward painting a very different picture of that January night than what he told Blaze's father on the phone. According to him, they had driven to BGO Park where Blaze, confident and comfortable with his sexuality, took the lead. Woodward, claiming this was his first gay encounter, described himself as nervous and hesitant. They smoked a joint to calm his nerves, and that's when things took a dark turn. Woodward told investigators he started nodding off from the weed. When he came to, he claims he noticed his pants were unbuckled and saw Blaze holding his phone. I just came undone, he told them. I went into a state of just terror. He said he panicked thinking Blaze had taken compromising photos that could expose his sexuality. Investigators would later confirm no such photos existed on Blaze's phone. The fear of being outed to his ultra-conservative Catholic father had apparently triggered something monstrous in Woodward. When asked about the actual stabbing later in court, he described experiencing an anger like nothing I did ever felt in my whole life. The prosecution would later argue this was not just panic or rage, it was a premeditated murder fueled by both internalized and externalized hate. This version of events, the scared, shut-away young man defending his secret, might have garnered some sympathy, if not for everything investigators found on his computer, rather than showing remorse or trauma over what he had done. Samuel seemed to be basking in the approval of his extremist community. Now the man accused of stabbing a teenager to death has taken the stand in his own defense. It would take over 6 years for justice to arrive. When Woodward finally appeared in court in April 2024, he was almost unrecognizable. For the very first time, the accused killer of 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein is speaking out 2 months after the start of his murder trial. 26-year-old Samuel Woodward was called up to testify by his defense attorney Ken Morrison. With long unkempt hair obscuring his face, observers compared him to Charles Manson. His defense attempted to paint the murder as an impulsive act driven by panic and sexual repulsion rather than hate. The defense also spoke of his diagnosis with ASD and OCD and the extremely conservative atmosphere in his home. Samuel also spoke, saying that he had the knife on him that night simply because of his old habits as a Boy Scout. But his words about the moment he took Blaze's life worked against him. Woodward's words in court paint a heartbreaking picture of a young man so terrified of his father's reaction to his sexuality that he did rather commit murder than face it. And yes, it's tragic that in 2018 and even now there are still families where children grow up knowing they will be rejected, hated, or worse if they come out. The damage of growing up in a household where you have to hide who you are, where you learn to hate a fundamental part of yourself, runs deep. But here is the thing, lots of people grow up in homophobic households. Lots of people struggle with accepting their sexuality, most of them don't. Join neo-Nazi groups, most of them don't stab someone 28 times. The cruel irony of this case is staggering. Woodward literally matched with Blaze on Tinder, setting his preferences to see other men. He exchanged flirty messages, he agreed to meet up, and then he united Blaze for being exactly what Woodward himself was trying to explore gay. It's like he killed a part of himself he could not face. Using Blaze as a proxy, but being in pain does not give anyone the right to inflict pain on others. Being scared does not justify making others fear for their lives, and struggling with your identity does not excuse taking someone else's life, especially not the life of someone who had done the brave thing. Woodward could not living authentically. While we can acknowledge the tragedy of Woodward's internal struggle, we cannot let it overshadow the bigger tragedy that Blaze Bernstein, who chose to live openly and honestly, was murdered for that very courage by someone who could not find the same courage in himself. On July 3, 2024, the jury found Woodward guilty of first-degree murder with a hate crime enhancement. The verdict meant life without the possibility of parole. Blaze's father said, "Difficult to describe the impact of this crime on my family, friends, and many friends of Blaze. The only analogy that I can provide it like the Big Bang Theory, that the universe exploded after Blaze's murder. He is guilty of disrupting a path of a brilliant future for Blaze, and yet I don't think that he realizes how many others he devastated along the way." The judge also noted the case's tragic dimensions: one brilliant young man dead, and the intelligent but troubled young man who never received the mental health support he needed. But ultimately, only one person made the choice to commit murder. Today, Bogo Park, where Blaze spent his final moments, has become a memorable. Hundreds of painting stones sent from around the world bear messages of love and acceptance. His parents established the Blaze It Forward campaign, promoting random acts of kindness in their son's memory. Way Blaze's story has become a symbol of larger issues facing our society. The persistence of hate in the digital age, the dangers of online radicalization, and the continued vulnerability of LGBTQ plus individuals. But it's also a reminder of the power of love over hate. As his mother said, Blaze's life mattered, and his legacy is to create good news, to inspire people to be better, to be kinder, and to work on repairing the world. Here is the scary truth about our online world: the same apps that help us connect can hide serious dangers. Blaze's story shows how a simple Tinder match, something millions of us use every day, can turn deadly when we don't know who is really behind that profile pic. Like Blaze's dad Gideon said, "It's not safe for you to be a lot of different minorities." Now, but it gets darker. While most of us are sharing memes and watching TikToks, hate groups are lurking in the shadows of social media, hunting for lonely, struggling people to recruit. They start small, maybe with some edgy jokes or seemingly harmless memes, but slowly pull vulnerable people deeply into extremism and extremist ideologies, and sometimes, like with Samuel Woodward. The most dangerous combination is when someone who hates themselves ends up joining groups that hate others. It's a twisted irony that Samuel, who could not accept his own sexuality, found community with neo-Nazis, who targeted the very people he secretly identified with. This is not just true crime, it's a wake-up call about how digital spaces we live in can either connect or destroy us, depending on how we use them and who we choose to become. Blaze Bernstein's story reminds us that behind every headline about online dangers and hate crimes is a real person. Someone's child, friend, and loved one. While his life was cut tragically short, his impact continues through the kindness he inspired and the changes his story demands we make in confronting hate both online and off. In the end, this case is not just about murder of the dangers of dating apps or even online extremism. It's about the ongoing struggle between love and hate, acceptance and rejection, truth and denial. Blaze chose to live authentically and love openly. His legacy changes us to do the same while remaining vigilant against those who would respond to such courage with violence. Hey guys, thanks for watching. What do you think about this case? What can we do to prevent vulnerable people like Samuel from being radicalized, and what can we do to stay safe from people like him? Leave a thoughtful comment, and before you go, make sure you did like and subscribe. See you soon.